first of all, a real warm welcome. We're going to do proper introductions in a minute. I'm Ashley Lodge. I'm the Mindfulness Lead for Pearson. Lisa, my co-host, for those of you who's joined, her video unfortunately isn't working, but she is there, but you'll just see a dark screen. So, and we'll talk a bit more about ourselves and what we do in a moment. So a little bit about, there we are. Right, I'm coming off the Q&A bit now. So before we begin, first of all, please, this next hour is for your mental health and well-being. It's to educate you on mindfulness, or for you to reconnect if you already know about mindfulness. So in order to do that, please make sure that these devices here are on silent or on airplane mode, so that they can't do anything to distract you in the next hour, because having full focus and attention, really helps our mental health and well-being, and is one of the fundamental tenets of mindfulness. If you've got any other screens open, please can you make sure that they're closed or minimized, or that any notifications are turned off, because again, that will allow you to be fully focused and present in this moment. We absolutely understand if you're looking after children, and although that this webinar is aimed at teachers and parents, we fully understand that there's probably going to be kids there. You're welcome to get them to join the practice. A lot of the explanations are going to be geared really at parents and teachers, but if you've got secondary school children here of that age and they want to come and sit on it, they are more than welcome to. From a safeguarding perspective, please just remember that if you feel stress, anxiety, low mood are having a real impact on you, a really negative impact, then please remember to talk to friends, family, colleagues. There are many organisations out there to help support you on that front, so please don't feel you're alone, but please always make sure that if those thoughts are really taking over, that you know the right channels to kind of talk to people about them. Lisa, what I'll if you can just monitor any Q&A or any chats that come up, that would be brilliant, just to see. But for everyone, please, if you can, what we'll do is we'll pause every so often and ask if there's any questions. If you want to put them in the chat or the Q&A, you're more than welcome to do that. Lisa will be monitoring them throughout, and then routinely, maybe 2 or 3 times during the presentation, we'll pause and just have a little bit, we'll answer them for you.
Yeah, I've got the chat and the Q&A open, so either is fine. Brilliant,
thank you very much. Okay, so moving on. Oh, whoops. So first of all, just to say before we get into what the agenda is, this is very much about what we call the oxygen mask. You know, whenever you get on a flight, that when you go through the safety briefing, what they'll always say is if there is a problem with the cabin pressure, please always make sure you put on your own oxygen mask first before you help others. As teachers, as parents, this is the exact same situation that we're going through now, that in order to help others and to be fully focused and at our best to help others, especially as teachers and parents, we need to make sure we look after our own mental health and well-being first, so that we can then look after those who we care for, who we look out for, who we're teaching, who we're the kids that we're rearing. So it's really about the oxygen mask mentality. This is to help educate you on what mindfulness is, how we know it's working, and to do a practice together to see what you think about it, how you got on with it, and to hear your feedback and see if there's any other ways in which we can support you. Okay. So what we're going to cover in this session, our roles at Pearson, we'll talk very briefly about who we are so you have an idea of our backgrounds. We're going to explain what mindfulness is. It's really important that we all have a unified definition, so we're all clear about that. We're going to talk a bit about the psychology and the neuroscience behind what we do in mindfulness, and how this is so important when we're dealing with stressful or anxious situations, unsettling times, such as the ones that we're in now with coronavirus. And then we're going to do a mindfulness practice. When we say a mindfulness practice, this also means it's another word of describing meditation. In our context, we very much call it practice. And we're going to do some inquiry, and that's the point at which we'd love to hear from you in terms of the chat functionality to see how you got on. And then finally, if we've got some time at the end, just do a quick Q&A. So that's our agenda for this. So I hope that's what you've signed up for. So a little bit about the pair of us then. So who we are. So I'm Ashley Lodge, and I am the mindfulness lead for Pearson. And I'm also a senior product manager, and I oversee mental health and wellbeing product development in our UK schools bit here in Pearson. There's a little pic of me. So my journey to mindfulness started 7 years ago in 2013. I came to it because I had been dealing with some really quite difficult anxiety. And I went to my doctor, to my GP, and had a long conversation with him. Got the book of the course that I'm going to show you a bit later on, and eventually got on the 8-week mindfulness course that's offered here at the Oxford Mindfulness Centre where I live. And I've been practicing it ever since. When I first did it, I didn't notice any immediate change. It was actually the people around me that said, Ashley, you're much more calm, you're far more grounded, you don't seem to be getting so wound up or anxious about things. And then little by little, I noticed the change it was having in me. So it took me to get to the end of the course and other people to notice it in me and for it to really, really say, wow, there's something going on in this. So I became a very big advocate and have been practicing it daily since. And in 2016, I started running mindfulness course pilots using the book of the course, and then eventually trained up as a mindfulness teacher in 2016. And I've been running Pearson UK's mindfulness program since 2017. And over 600 of our colleagues have been through this program, which is largely 6-week mindfulness course. And we'll show you some of the sample data that we get to show the impact. So, and finally, I'm also a coach and part of Pearson UK's Well group. That's our wellbeing group for Pearson staff. So now over to Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. If
not, we can hear you.
Sorry, you can't see me. So I have a day job at Pearson. I direct the intellectual property and rights team globally for Pearson. And I also support Ashley in what he's just described, or his efforts in rolling out mindfulness for Pearson. So I've been practicing mindfulness since 2011, and I was introduced to it as a result of suffering really quite a bad burnout in work. Unfortunately, it's pretty common now, and people are talking about it more, but it wasn't talked about so much back then. I practiced mindfulness, learned how to practice mindfulness, and it really, really helped me. It helped calm me, provide me with focus, and I just felt so much better, and it was quite a journey. As Ashley said, it's not an overnight fix, but over time it's really, really has supported me, and I've kept going. So I then trained as a mindfulness teacher in around 2017, and after completing the Oxford Mindfulness course, the same one that Ashley did, and I've been supporting Ashley in Pearson's mindfulness program whenever I can, ever since. And then recently, the last 4 years, I've been studying towards a BSc in psychology with neuroscience, really inspired by my mindfulness journey and wanting to find out what happens in the brain as a result of this fantastic mindfulness practice. And really that has been an incredible learning journey for me. And then I also provide some psychology education sessions here at Pearson, really focused on managing stress and the stress response in a work environment. So that's me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. And there's Lisa's photo, so that we know her video isn't working at the moment, but at least you can see a photo of Lisa to know what she looks like. We obviously do like to be able to do the webcam where it works, because it's obviously nice to see her face. So everyone, that's what Lisa looks like if you can't see her now on the video. Okay, thank you. And a massive thank you. So we have a real sense of gratitude to Lisa for all of her help on this, because she's so great at doing this in addition to her day job. So thank you, Lisa, so much. What we know is that co-presenting these makes it so much easier, because we can have a bit of a dialogue, and when we do the practice together, we can model some inquiry, which then helps stimulate the discussion when you put in your chat stuff later on. So what is mindfulness then? Let's try to come up with a common definition, because lots of people are probably going to understand different things from mindfulness. So the definition that I like to use is that of Jon Kabat-Zinn. And many of you have probably heard the name. Jon Kabat-Zinn really is responsible, I suppose, for bringing mindfulness fully into the West. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, he founded the, I don't know if it was not necessarily the Mindfulness Center, but it was a stress reduction clinic at the University of Massachusetts Hospital in Boston. And he wanted to see how he could take kind of meditative practice that had come out of Eastern spiritual traditions to help people that were dealing with long-term pain conditions, to see if that meditation might help them being able to cope better with what they were going through without such a dependence on analgesics or medications. So he defines it as paying attention in a particular way, and there are three bits to that: on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So let's just explore those three bits. On purpose, what is our intention? What do we want to use mindfulness for? What's going to be our attention? So our attention in this session is all around how we can use what mindfulness is and how we can use it to create a calmer response to the difficulties we might be facing at the moment. The second part, in the present moment, we can only really live in the present moment because the past is done and the future is yet to come. And so being in the present moment is the only moment in which we can fully be. And finally, non-judgmentally, the third part of this is all around that we as a species have survived all these millions of years because we've had to make split-second judgments on all the vast amounts of sensory data coming to us to know whether it might be a threat to our existence or not. And that's absolutely good. It's part of the survival. The problem is that sometimes our brain goes in and starts trying to create stories around some of that information. And some of those stories might be false. So mindfulness gives us the invitation to stand back, to be a bit more objective about what information we're receiving, and to be non-judgmental about it, just to experience it, rather than start analyzing and spinning out stories that might be false. I think it's also important to say what mindfulness isn't, because sometimes people have these misconceptions that these following lists below are what mindfulness is. So it isn't a relaxation method. That's not to say that it's a nice, pleasant side effect or additional benefit. When we do the practice later on, no doubt many of you will feel a sense of feeling relaxed and calm. But that's not the goal of what we do. It's a nice side effect. Nor is it about emptying the mind. Lisa and I both teach mindfulness in a corporate setting. It's very much about how we can help people, if you like, organize the mind, train the mind to work in better, calmer, wiser, more productive ways. It's not about achieving a state of bliss. We don't walk around the office in white flowy robes and want people to put flowery garlands around our neck and burn joss sticks, much as that might be nice on occasion. It's not about that. There might be spiritual traditions that do that, but in a more corporate setting or in a more educational setting, that's obviously not what it is. Nor is it a panacea. It's not like a tablet that you can give someone and hope that it cures all ills. Nor is it a quick fix or sticking plaster. It takes time and effort, and we'll talk a bit about that later. And finally, it's important to say that it's not a replacement for counselling or therapy where that's required. It might be something that a counsellor or therapist may signpost people to do afterwards. Very much, it isn't a replacement for that. It's something that can be done after or in conjunction. And therefore, if you're currently undergoing any counselling or therapy, then it's always best to kind of touch base with your counsellor or therapist first before undertaking any practice or. So I hope that unites us behind what the definition is that we want to use for today's session and beyond. So the particular type of mindfulness that Lisa and I are interested in, that Lisa and I practice and teach here in Pearson, is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So as I was talking earlier about John Kabat-Zinn, he was there in the stress reduction clinic in the University of Massachusetts Hospital in Boston. And he was, doing all these academic studies showing how mindfulness was having a real positive impact on the patients, on the people that were coming to his courses. Then a bunch of psychologists and psychiatrists were reviewing this and said, actually, could we use some of that mindfulness to help patients who'd been dealing with recurrent depression? Because they had been using cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, for a while to help see if they could find some alternative form of treatment other than Prozac to help people deal with recurrent depression. What they did is they then fused mindfulness with cognitive behavioral therapy and pulled together what's called MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And one of the main people involved in that in the UK is Mark Williams. And Mark Williams, who has written this book along with Danny Penman, Mindfulness, Practical Guide to Finding Peace in a Frantic World. This is the book, this is the curriculum on which we base our course here at Pearson. And through his work at the University of Oxford and the Oxford Mindfulness Centre, both where Lisa and I went and did our initial 8-week course, and we go along there for CPD modules too. It's one of the world leading centres, and it has done a lot and lots of studies around the impact that MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, have around all manner of different people, recurrent depression, how it can help people both at school, adults, all people across different walks of life. And there's a whole raft of different papers about it. Where it really, really took off, and where many of you will probably have heard about mindfulness, is that in the UK, NICE, who is a statutory body who's responsible for licensing pharmaceuticals, they looked at a pilot that was done, and it showed that what they did is they took people with recurrent depression, some they kept on SSRIs, and some they moved across onto MBCT. And what they found was that MBCT was just as effective for 3 episodes of depression or more as Prozac style drug. And that study, I think that was in 2007, really then hit the news. And then loads of other studies that have been out there too, really started to take over, and people saying, actually, you know, there is something in this. I'm conscious that I've been seeing some things flashing up in the Q&A or the chat. Anything around that, Lisa? Are you okay to?
Yeah, no, I'm not seeing any questions
that they're finding interesting.
Yeah, you're all right. Yeah, no, carry on. No questions as yet.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's good. I'll let you keep tabs on that, Lisa, because I see them flash up every so often, but I'm just checking to make sure we don't miss any.
No worries.
Any good questions? Okay, we'll carry on. So, what impact is mindfulness having in Pearson then? So whenever Lisa and I run courses, we always get people's psychological data before and after courses to understand the impact. So this is all self-reported data that we've got here. And what we're seeing, and this is one cohort of 100 people from early last year, and we're seeing this pretty much in nearly every 6-week course we teach. Anxiety, self-reported anxiety is going down by around 45%. Stress is dropping by about 20%. Tension is going up over 25%, and focus is coming in on around 25%. So we are seeing really positive impacts, and we're seeing this data replicated time and time again. And last year I was invited by our Italian colleagues to run a pilot in the Italian Ministry of Education in Rome, and Lisa is helping me write up an academic study of the positive impact that had. So please look out for that. We'll be publishing that hopefully in the next few months on our site, and maybe in some journals too. But that obviously we're very pleased to say had an impact, has had a positive impact too. We can't give the results yet, but we're pleased to say that it's had a positive impact. So we're looking forward to publicising that in due course. Watch out for that. So let's just talk a little bit about the science behind mindfulness. This is where I'm going to hand over to Lisa, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the brain.
Thanks, Ashley. I'm just going to start very quickly by talking about the fight or flight response, which most people, I think, reasonably familiar with. So this is our survival system in the brain that helps us deal with threat, and it's a very powerful response. It kicks in even if we think we might be in danger. So in the present situation that we all find ourselves in, we may be watching a bit more news than usual. We may be connecting with social media a bit more often. And if we're exposed to kind of news stories, which, let's face it, are pretty frightening, our body will react, our brain will react to that sense of threat. So even if we think we may be in danger at some point, we get that fight or flight system kicking in. It's a very, very powerful response. And during that response, there's a lot of activity in the limbic part of the brain, which is right in the middle of the brain. It's an evolutionary, very old part of the brain, and its purpose is to really trigger lots of physiological reactions, so preparing the body in lots and lots of different ways to either fight or to run away. And psychologically, we will experience feelings of fear, of panic, and our thinking may have a bit of a negative bias. So we may start thinking around worst case scenarios, what might happen if this happens or that happens, and it really feeds that fight or flight reaction. So it's very, very, very strong reaction in the body. And then the other part of the brain that's involved in this process and that's connected with the limbic brain is the prefrontal cortex. So this bit at the top and front of the brain. This is our executive center, we call it, in the brain. It's responsible for rational thinking, for creative thinking, for logic, reason. So it's an incredibly important part of the brain, and it's the part of the brain that, when that kicks in, helps us to feel calm and settled. So here we have two interconnected parts of the brain, so they work in balance with each other. So in times of stress, the limbic part of the brain is in charge, and then other times when we're calm, or danger has passed, or the perceived threat has passed, then that other part, the prefrontal cortex, will kick in and we'll feel calm. So they're interconnected, they work in balance. But during times of really prolonged stress, which we may find ourselves in during this kind of situation, we can get a little bit out of balance. So the limbic system may remain in charge for a bit longer, and that can be uncomfortable for people. So in terms of mindfulness, fMRI studies show a reduction in the limbic part of the brain, in the activity in that part of the brain, following a sustained regular mindfulness practice. Whilst at the same time, those same fMRI studies show an increase in connectivity in the prefrontal cortex, and connectivity is very important with the brain. It promotes efficiency. So we can see that a mindfulness practice is really helpful for calming us and for producing some more kind of balance between that system in the brain. So all of what I've just described really explains neuroscientifically what we see, what Ashley and I see in terms of the qualitative changes that Ashley described earlier in our participants, and the quantitative results of the questionnaires that Ashley's just spoken to. So over to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, so what Lisa was effectively saying was that, what we know from mindfulness is that we can start to reduce down that activity that Lisa was talking about, the activity we get in the limbic brain, and then mindfulness helps to rewire our brain to increase the activity here. And it's a bit like, the analogy I always use is this. I went and dusted down my dumbbells the other day because gyms in the UK are all closed at the moment. So I'm having to resort to my old set of dumbbells, which I dusted down for this photograph. And when I'm in my class talking about how I'm training the brain, it's a bit like when we go to the gym and lift weights. We know that if we want to build, let's just say biceps, we've got to lift the dumbbells and do so many reps. And we probably want to be doing that 3 or 4 times a week. We tear the muscle fibers, and gradually that muscle increases. It's very similar with brain training. And that's what we're effectively doing in mindfulness, is rewiring the brain. So every time we do a practice, what we're doing is we're shifting that neural activity, those connections, from normally the limbic brain, which might be getting a little bit more activity because there's a sense of fear and worry. What we're doing is we're moving that focus of activity to the prefrontal cortex here. And every time our mind wanders, we're bringing it back, that focus of the attention in the prefrontal cortex away from the limbic brain. And although it might feel a bit frustrating, a bit like when we lift the weights, it might feel a bit painful, we know that's the actual bit that we believe makes the difference. We believe that doing that regular daily practice of about 10 minutes is therefore creating that change in the brain, more neural density here in the prefrontal cortex, less in the limbic brain. So that's how we believe it's working from fMRI imagery. So the psychology, because the neuroscience explains how structurally what's going on in the brain. Let's have a look at the psychology as to what we're up to in mindfulness. It's really important to bring out that these practices are fully grounded in neuroscience and psychology. So there's 3 constituent bits to mindfulness. The psychological principles, which we're going to talk about shortly. So there's what we call the psychoeducation. We educate people in the psychology of what we're doing so they understand it. The next part is called formal practice. Formal practice is another word for meditation, and we get people ideally to do that once a day for 10 minutes. Some studies are out there that show just 10 minutes of practice every day can help do that rewiring. So it needn't be onerous, but it's something that needs to be practiced regularly, ideally daily. Like lifting the weights can build the muscle, so the practice of meditation helps move that activity to the prefrontal cortex, the calmer, wiser bit of the brain. And then finally, everyday mindfulness. So everyday mindfulness is around doing things that might be making a cup of tea in a really mindful way, boiling the water, putting the tea bag in, watching the colour change, smelling the tea brewing, adding in milk, feeling the warm cup in your hands. All of those things that take us that very present, moment, focused, bit by bit approach, rather than our brain being scattergun and all over the place. That's everyday mindfulness. And when we do all of those three things, we have a better sense of our self-awareness. We are able to self-manage better, and it creates happier, calmer, more focused people. And that's what we need absolutely at the moment, when we've got so much going on. All of us are having to change in so many different ways to adapt to the way the world has changed so quickly. But when we can do that, if we can be mentally well, then that can obviously help support all those other people, both support ourselves and all those people around us who might be dependent on us, especially as teachers and parents, like many of you on today's call are. So in mindfulness, we talk about there being two modes that our minds, that our brains exist in. And what we're trying to do really is be able to allow our brain to change gear more often. Because very often our brain exists in what we call, our mind exists in what we call doing, or sometimes it's called doing driven mode, because there's a real sense of driving us on, going forward. Doing driven mode does what it says on the tin. It gets things done. It's action or task orientated. So you're going to be doing this with your housework, you're going to be doing this with your schooling, with your educating, you're going to be doing this with your work, with your job, where you might be looking at kind of having to deliver something, having to analyze something. And those are some of the examples I've given, like making dinner is a good example. Doing task. Analyzing a spreadsheet, doing task. Very often, they also are quite things that we do automatically. We're so used to doing these doing tasks that very often they become second nature and we do them automatically. And that's great because it helps free up the brain to do other more useful things. The interesting thing for us, and what the invitation mindfulness gives, is it says, do you know what? Doing mode is great for getting things done, but it's not always the best way of maybe encountering and dealing with more emotional things that come up. And so it gives us being mode, which is a different, it's very different from doing mode in that it's very, very grounded in the present moment. A lot of doing mode can be past, reflecting on the past and predicting the future. Whereas doing mode is very grounded in the present, because it says, like I said earlier, we can only fully be in this moment. So it gives us the invitation to come back each time. Which leads me to that second bullet point. It's that moment-to-moment awareness, particularly through the senses. Doing mode is very up here in the brain. It's this very thinking mode. Being mode is much more in the body. It's much more connecting to our senses in the body to really sense what's going on, and to then choose how we might respond rather than react in calmer, wiser ways. And the nice thing also about doing mode is it gives us that full awareness of what's happening. We're able to stand back and be more objective about what's going on and our own thought processes. Whereas in doing mode, we can be very much dragged in to our thought processes so quickly that we forget that's our own interpretation of things, rather than a more objective stand back view. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just talk us through some examples of doing and being, and then if you've got any questions, we can answer those. So I'll go through some examples of how we can switch, how we can change gear from doing to being. So I went out, I'm very lucky where I live. I live near a very big park. And so what I try to do every day at lunchtime is to go out either for a lovely bike ride or for a 1 hour walk. Because here in the UK, we're allowed to do kind of one main bit of exercise a day. So I try to get out, get that fresh air in my lungs. And I went out the other day, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And as I was walking around, I just saw the buds on the trees. And I just loved looking up at the blue sky. And I was really drinking them with all my senses. They just cut the playing field lawns, and the smell of the cut grass. I was just in that moment going, I'm just grateful to be here in this moment and use my senses to anchor me. And when I'm doing that, I'm entering being mode. So I'm not going through tons of reflection. I'm engaging with my senses to really be fully present in that moment, and to really appreciate and have a sense of gratitude of, I'm okay, look at all this great stuff around me. And that's okay, because it gets us away from that whir, the thoughts, the analysis, are we going to be okay? What's going to happen on the news later? So So the invitation is maybe see, can you go out on a daily walk or something that allows you to find some way in which you can ground and anchor yourself in that present moment through your senses. Accepting how things are right now. So up until a few weeks ago, many children were in school, learning as they would do in classrooms, led by an actual physical teacher in the classroom, and they had their 20 or 30 classmates around them. We've now moved from that to being at home on our laptops, on the dining room table, and everything's changed. And what can be very difficult sometimes is in doing mode, our brain wants to strive for things to be different. I don't want to feel this way right now. I want to be back in my normal job. I want to go and see my friends. I want schools to be open. I want everyone to be healthy. We all want that. But at the moment, we can't have it that way because we're all doing all of our self-isolating or social distancing measures to do all the right things in terms of health and safety to reduce the impact of this coronavirus as much as possible. And so that leads us to say, actually, I just have to accept how things are right now and to be okay in this moment and to say, it's okay to be here. It's okay for things to be like this, but I accept them. When you accept how things are right now and know that they're not going to be like that forever, it helps take some of the artificial pressure off that can sometimes only augment how we might feel unhappy or down and maybe slightly more anxious. So accepting how things are right now can sometimes be very liberating and shift us into being mode, being okay, rather than this constant railing for things to be different. Engaging all the senses through simple actions. So I talked about everyday mindfulness earlier. Here was my little cafetiere this morning. Actually, it's not a little cafetiere, it's a reasonable sized cafetiere. And I always enjoy that routine in the morning of making my coffee, but doing it in a way that engages my senses, boiling the water, putting in the coffee grounds, make it the smell of the coffee as it brews, the change of color when I pour it into the cup and the milk, putting my hands round the cup and feeling the warmth in it. Each time I do that, it brings me back. I'm sensing, I'm moving away from analyzing. And that's good because it helps move activity away from the limbic brain to the calmer, wiser bit of the brain here. So simple actions like that really equally help doing that rewiring. Like I said earlier, what mindfulness helps us do is be more objective. When we enter into being mode, we can stand back from our thoughts and solid and real to seeing them as mental events. So we start to be able to see things as if we were looking through a telescope, as if we were getting a more panoramic view, rather than the up close front view where we're kind of going, this is it. This is how things are right now. I can't see any other way out. Mindfulness goes, it's okay. You can be in this moment right now, stand back, observe the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions as they come up, and observe them passing. When you can let them be, and they can come and go and pass, sometimes it helps diffuse them slightly. It helps come up with a calmer, wiser response. Sitting with emotions is another important thing. So it's to say it's to be okay with difficulty. It's to say it's okay to feel that it's uneasy at the moment. It's okay to feel a bit sad at times. There's been times, I've been doing webinars. We had over 600 colleagues on webinars last week, Lisa and I. We've had nearly 200 of you on this call now. And I'm very happy to say that, by and large, I really love helping and supporting people, but equally I'm human too. There were some days when I saw the news and it made me feel sad. And I went, it's okay to feel sad now, Ashley. You're a human and you're an empath, and everyone's going to be feeling maybe a sense of loss or a bit of grief at times for the different kind of emotions that we go through. But it's okay to feel that right now. And when again we say it's okay to feel that way, we're allowing them to dissipate in more gentle, kind ways, rather than letting them build up and then coming out. Maybe we might get into rows with our partners or families, or get more sad and down. So it says it's okay to feel and be this way. It's okay to approach difficulty and to be okay with it, rather than avoiding those difficulties. And then a big thing that we all say in our classes when we come towards the end around week 6 is it's important to do the things that nourish you, that you enjoy, whether that might be photography, whether it might be with your children painting, whether it might just be you painting, whether it might be sitting on the sofa reading a book and having some tea. getting that balance of being able to do the things that are right for you, the things that nourish and support you, that allow you to be able to carry on in some sense of normality. So I want to pause there now to invite, if there's any questions, if you want to use the Q&A function for this, rather than the chat function, the Q&A function. Lisa, I don't know whether you've had any chance to, I don't know whether there's any other questions.
I've just answered a few on content, really, on the fact that we are recording the session, so you'll be able to listen again, and sharing some further resources on mindfulness as well.
Yeah.
We have had one question actually, Ashley. So when practicing a formal practice, what's the best time to carry this out, and a recommended amount of time that you should dedicate to?
So I find what I do, I mean, as mindfulness teachers, Lisa and I do more. Generally, I think the agreement is we do around 40 minutes a day. I split mine into two 20-minute sessions, once in the morning and once in the evening. So I think for people who are new to mindfulness, I think ideally something like 10 minutes a day is a great start. I do it when I wake up in the morning because there's minimum disruption in the house, and it sets me up for the rest of the day. And then I do it when I've finished my working day. So I try to close down my computer by 6 to keep some sense of routine going. And then I like to be able to say, right, I'm going to do my 20 minutes of more formal practice now. What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I do all my practice first thing in the morning, and then I do just some daily, normal, everyday mindfulness throughout the day, informal practice. And in terms of recommended, like a scientifically recommended amount, it is around between 10 and 20 minutes, but to be honest, the research is really varied, and there's a lot of individual differences at play. So I think finding something that suits you, when you feel the benefit, you'll know what's right for you. So you should trust yourself and just experiment and see how much you might need, and continue even when you're feeling good. It's a practice that we should continue all of the times. It's the regularity and the consistency.
Thank you, Lisa.
Really,
you're breaking up a little bit there, but so just another couple of questions, then we're going to get in and do our practice, everyone. So we might be repeating this webinar. We've run it twice so far, but if there is real demand and people need it again, then I'm sure we can look at it. I need to look into, obviously, rules and regulations around privacy and sharing the practice, sharing the videos. So please let us come back to you on that one. This one, I've got a question there about, can you tell us something about mindfulness for children? We're going to look in and maybe look at an offering for that later on. This one is very much focused around adults and what you can do. But obviously some of the things we've been describing about being in the moment, so some simple ways about being mindful of children might be just like doing that painting, just those little practical activities where you're just inviting your child to do some painting, or maybe it might be building Lego or something with Play-Doh or clay, where you can just keep inviting them to come back and really talk about, what is it like? You know, what do you like about what senses? What are you getting from with the colours, and what are you doing there? And that real sense of that direction towards that activity. But we can very much look into that. Just answer another question from Mark there. What does your morning practice look like? So my morning formal practice is very much, as Lisa and I teach mainly about 8 key practices, we very much have them almost stored in our brains. So I will go through like breath and body, similar to what we're going to do now, Mark. So we're going to do a practice in a minute. There are similarities and differences to NLP, and we could get into that. That would be another discussion another time. What we're going to do is we're now going to move to talk a bit about a practice. So we're going to pause on the questions now, and let's see how we get on. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to do a quick summary before we begin the practice. So dealing with emotions, observing thoughts, feelings and sensations by standing back and being objective, and treating our sense and others with a sense of kindness. That doesn't mean that there are times when we shouldn't call out what might be incorrect behaviours, or times when we might feel it's right to do that, but doing it in a calm, passionate manner, making sure that sometimes that fear mechanism kicks in, and you can see people getting into very kind of wiry debates on Twitter or social media. So by noticing emotions coming up. Oh, whoops, sorry. Learning how to turn down automatic stress and anxiety responses, noticing when that flight or fight response kicks in, and using the breath to calm and anchor us. Accepting how things are right now. So accepting how things are right now doesn't mean you should accept any rubbish. You still have the right to question. You still have the right to call into question some of the things that are going in, but know when you feel it's okay to accept how things are and when it's okay to call things into question. I saw a question about that earlier, so I'm kind of addressing that as I best can now. And finally, reducing distraction. About what we know is that practicing meditation increases focus and attention by building the neural pathways associated with it. So we're going to invite you now, join us for a practice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the practice now. So please hold on any questions. If we get time at the end, we'll look at them. So what I really want you to do is open now with a sense of openness and curiosity to do this practice together. I'm going to talk to you a bit before we do it. This practice is called Breath and Body. It's one of our intro practices we do at the very beginning of our course. And it's very much about, we'll start in the top left. I'm going to ask you in a moment, if you're okay to close your eyes, to direct the spotlight of attention to sensations of, first of all, the breath and then the body. The mind is going to wander because it's going to do what our mind does. That's absolutely fine. You gently bring your mind back with a sense of awareness, and we repeat. So all of those images there, why is there a picture of a puppy in the middle? A lot of that is around, actually, if you've ever trained a puppy, it's treating your mind with a sense of kindness. Because we know what resists persists. If you beat your mind up because it wandered, you'll carry on. If you're kind to your mind and just saying, actually, it's okay for my mind to wander, it's doing what mind does, then you're invited to keep bringing it back to sense. Okay, so in order to do the practice, what we need to do is get good posture. So please make sure that you're comfortable in your seat with your ankles and knees and pelvis and hips at right angles. Your back either just in front of the seat, or if you've got back pain then, like me, then you can rest your back on the seat, but you want to be upright and alert. And then in a moment, begin to close your eyes if you feel comfortable with that. And if at all during the practice you might feel lightheaded or anything like that, then you are absolutely welcome to just open your eyes to ground yourself back where you are right now. And if you want, you can place your hands either on the lap or the knees, wherever's comfortable. And if during this practice you need to maybe move slightly or adjust, that's absolutely fine too. Looking after your own body and your posture and your comfort. With the eyes closing now, becoming aware of the room that you're sat in. Letting go of any noises going on around. Allowing the focus of the attention to turn inwards now. The focus of the attention on the breath to start off with. And then with the next in-breath, really allowing yourself to feel all the sensations as the air enters in through the nostrils, travels to the back of the throat, down into the lungs. Lungs and abdomen expand and contract as the breath comes back up and out through the nose or mouth. Repeating that again with your next in-breath, feeling all of the sensations with the air entering through the nostrils, traveling to the back of the throat, down into the lungs and abdomen expand, contract. The breath then comes back up and out through the nose or mouth. Allowing you now a moment in silence to focus in on your own particular rhythm of the breath, feeling all of the sensations with the breath coming in and the breath going out. If it helps, the invitation is you can also place one of your hands on your abdomen. You feel the rise and fall, breath coming in and the breath going out. If the mind wanders, gently bringing it back to the focus of the attention here and now, the breath coming in and the breath going out. Exploring with a sense of openness and curiosity. Feeling all of those sensations, where the air enters through the nostrils, travels the back of the throat, down into the lungs. Lungs and abdomen expand and then contract as the breath comes back up and out through the nose or mouth. And if the mind wanders, then bringing it back. Then, with the next in-breath, imagining now as if the breath were being pulled all the way down through past the lungs, down through the legs, to the feet. When the focus of the attention reaches the feet, letting go of the focus of the attention on the breath and allowing yourself to breathe as you do normally. And maybe wiggling the toes if you want to help you feel what's going on in the feet right now. What sensations are arising in this part of the body? If there's no particular sensations, that's fine. If the mind wanders, then gently bringing it back. The focus here and now on the feet. Then, with the next in-breath, shifting the focus, the attention now up through the legs, starting with the lower legs, to the knees, then from the knees all the way through to the thighs and buttocks and pelvis. Holding both legs in awareness right now. Seeing what's going on in this part of the body. If the mind wanders, then gently bringing it back. And if there's no particular sensations, then just allowing that to be too. Just holding the legs in awareness as best you can with a sense of openness and curiosity. Not wanting things to be different, but just accepting how things are right now in your body, in the legs. Then, with the next in-breath, shifting the focus of attention now up into the torso, starting with the abdomen, the lower back, the mid-back, the thoracic area, the upper back, right through to the top of the chest. Holding the whole of the torso in awareness right now. Seeing what's going on in this part of the body. What sensations are arising. If there's no particular sensations, then that's fine too. Just holding that in awareness. If the mind wanders, gently with a sense of kindness, bringing the mind back. Focus here and now on the breath, on the torso. Feeling all the sensations in this part of the body. Then with the next in-breath, shifting the focus of the attention now into the shoulders. Pausing here for a moment. Shoulders is often an area where subtle stress or tension may build up. And then gradually moving down the arms towards the elbows through to the wrists, all the way to the fingertips. Arms holding both arms in awareness right now. Seeing what's going on in this part of the body. If there's no particular sensations, that's fine too. And if the mind wanders, then gradually bringing it back. Focus the attention here and now on the arms. Seeing what's going on in this part of the body. Then with the next in-breath, shifting the focus of the attention now up into the back of the neck, the back of the head, crown of the head, down through into the face, around the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, chin, jaw, down into the throat. Holding the whole of the head in awareness right now. Seeing what's going on in this part of the body. If there's no particular sensations, that's fine too. And if the mind wanders, then gently bringing it back. The focus of the attention here and now. And then now, allowing your focus of the attention to return back to the breath, where we started, to breath coming in through the nostrils, traveling down into the lungs. Lungs and abdomen expand and contract as the breath comes back up and out through the nose or mouth. Feeling all of those sensations, the breath coming in and the breath going out. Whenever the mind wanders, gently acknowledging this, and bringing the mind back with a sense of kindness. Focus the attention on the breath coming in and the breath going out. And then gradually, when you feel ready, opening the eyes, come back to full awareness of the room that we're each sitting in now. So thank you for participating in that. We're now going to do a little bit of inquiry, because what's really important each time is to do some inquiry around that. So I'm going to put up some questions. Lisa and I are going to do a bit of inquiry together, and then we're going to invite you to use the chat functionality. You'll be able to see some of the things that Lisa and I are talking about to share what your experiences were. And there's no right and wrongs, but we're really interested in what was going on in terms of sensing. What were you sensing? What was going on in the body? How much awareness was there? Was there much mind wandering? There's no right and wrongs, by the way. Whatever happened, happened, and that's all fine. So Lisa, let me know, how did you find your practice today? Was there much mind wandering? What were you feeling or sensing in the body as we were going through that? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I did have a lot of mind wandering, I have to say, and I think that's I've noticed that a lot of the time over the last couple of weeks or so, that my mind is it's in all different directions, thinking of the things that I have to do. So I had a lot of planning thoughts. I had the odd worry thought. At one point I was thinking about what I might have for my dinner later. So yeah, lots of thoughts, but able to bring back my attention to the right place. So I was able to do that. So that was good. And I do feel calmer, as I usually do, not every time, but I usually do after a mindfulness practice, feeling a bit calmer.
Thank you. I had similar to you, but sometimes I can feel different parts of my body. Like I could feel my hands. Sometimes they go a bit colder at the top of my thighs. Feel sense more in that bit of my body. And I remember once there was one thought popped into my head about later on, and I went off, and then I realised that I was talking about the moment, for a brief moment, about breath rather than torso. And I was like going, that's okay, Ashley. Even mindfulness teachers are human, and our minds can go off. And I thought, that's fine. With integrity, I just came back to making sure that we were in the torso and then the shoulders. So it can affect all of us. I think it's important to say that even us as mindfulness teachers, our minds wander. And what we do is we don't beat ourselves up. We go, that's okay. There's a lot going on right now. And sometimes we might have really sessions where we come out really calm, and other sessions where we might feel a bit, oh, that was a bit frustrating. And then it's to go, but that's okay, because there's a lot going on in your mind right now. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Shall we have a look? Let's have a look at the chat.
Yeah,
let's go in there. Please do be feeling in, telling us how it was going on. A lot of mind wandering, and yes, sometimes things that might come up might trigger off thoughts that make you feel sad, and it's to go, that's okay. Doing mode would go avoid, avoid, avoid. Sometimes some thoughts might come up that feel a little bit sad and whatever, and it's to go, it's okay to feel like that. And to just acknowledge that, and maybe then just come back to acknowledge that, and then come back to the body, or come back to the mind, come back to where you were being directed to. So yes, so I kind of think what we're seeing from people is that there was some mind wandering to distant relatives, other people concentrating on the breathing, much easier in parts of the body. Yeah, sometimes people might find it easier to focus on the breathing and not the body, and for other people it can be very difficult. Hard to slow down. It became a wet, tense shoulders. Yeah, we can hold a lot of tension in our shoulders. So sometimes just doing that allows us to come back to our body and to really kind of see how we're getting on there.
We've had a few questions or points raised, really, Ashley, about people feeling that they don't have time to look after themselves at the moment. And I think I would just speak to that and say that I think a lot of us are feeling that at the moment, but just draw your attention back to one of the first slides that actually presented the oxygen mask approach, and really asking yourself how you can best look after yourself is like asking, how can I best look after others? So without feeling rested, you won't be able to provide what you want to provide to others. So it is not selfish. It's absolutely putting other people's needs first can draw on your own energy and make you less capable of being able to do that. So please do take the time to look after yourself. And you may, and I think another question that came up is that we don't have access to the kind of things that usually help us. Well, if there's one thing that human beings are, it's adaptable. So find some time to go and find different ways of relaxing, different areas of interest. And I know a lot of it's screen based, but it doesn't have to be. We are allowed to go out once a day to walk, so just try to find out other ways of relaxing whenever you can, or just simply resting and carrying out a practice, a mindfulness practice will be beneficial. So, but you're not alone.
Yeah, and I can't say, I mean, what really grounds and anchors me in the moment is being able to, is doing my daily practice and getting out and doing daily exercise and monitoring how much news how much my news intake. So really looking after that. I'm loving the bit about drinking the Pepsi and feeling the bubble in the tummy. I really like that. That's really engaging with the senses. What we're trying to do is move more to that sensory bit. We can often get into so much analysis here that by coming back to our body and the senses, actually, we can become more relaxed and calmer as a result of that, because we're moving away from more mental agitation to coming back to sensing the body. That doesn't mean that people won't encounter difficulty and difficult thoughts at times, and they will come up. And mindfulness says that's going to come up just as the calm comes up too. And there'll be some days when you do it and you feel perfectly calm, and other days when harder emotions might come up. But mindfulness gives us that equilibrium, and it gives that equanimity where we can be okay with that. I'm conscious we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to put up some final bits and pieces then, and things to follow up on. Just for information, recently, for those of you in the UK, obviously we have a revised series, and we've updated them with revision materials around mindfulness. Obviously, these were created before COVID happened, and all of the quals and everything that have all of those different things that have changed because of government mandates. But for future, and even for now, we've got these resources out there. The GCSE Revision Planner and Study Skills Guide now have mindfulness introductions in there for 16-year-old students who are around 16. Intro to mindfulness with audio practice too. I think what I'd love to get from the sense of you, if you could use the chat functionality and just maybe put a hand up, is how many of you would be interested in a paid for online mindfulness course that might be a subscription one that might last 4 weeks. We would love to hear interest from people, so please just put in the chat or raise your hand if you think that would be something you're interested in, that it would be an online, probably not necessarily live, but it might be something we pre-record that you can. I'm seeing lots of hands going up. I'm seeing a good amount of hands going up, so that's really good. I'm really interested. If you want to talk to me particularly about that, I've got my email address is there if you want. My LinkedIn account and my Twitter, so please connect if you want to have an ongoing discussion about mindfulness and how you think it could help you. Guys, we're very much up to time now. I want to thank you for coming along and participating today. Do you know what? I'm just seeing a comment from one of the teachers that I taught in Rome, and it's lovely, Giovanna, to have you on here. Ciao. Lovely to see some of the people I've worked with in the past. Lovely to meet all you new people. Please look after yourselves. Use what you can in terms of the mindfulness. I want a real massive thank you to Lisa, who's joined me for this, because I wouldn't be able to do these without Lisa. So a real sense of gratitude to you, Lisa, for everything you've done. So please look after yourself. Please take care of yourselves. Remember that your mental health and well-being is as important as your physical health and well-being during these times. So we really hope this has been interesting. We really hope this has given you lots of information and also what might come in terms of potential products to help you all going forward. So thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely feedback. Thank you for joining with a sense of openness and curiosity. Hope we've done our best to answer as many questions. We've not been able to answer them all, but I think I've tried to elude them to them during the presentation. So thank you so much to everyone.